hurdling all manner of technical difficulties. This is an Olympic style and Olympic-sized feat here, employing the electronic skills and tasks of Brother Joseph Barry, the dynamic St. Benedict Center duo, have now delivered us live stereo audio from the St. Benedict Center. Brother, are you there?
I am here, KingDude.
You've never gotten an intro like that. I think I should get 2 Christmas cards this year.
No, I'm agreeing with you that I do have Olympic-sized feet.
To quote Madeline Kahn, it's true. It's true. It actually is. Brother, there's a lot going on. You and I are going to talk about Marco Rubio and about Zionism and about the West Bank and all this other stuff. But let it be said that one thing that we can all agree on, no matter what side of the Trump spectrum you fall on, the enemy is in disarray. If nothing else, there is an opportunity here for us, right? Because the enemy has been at least administered. In the war, we have finally seen them lose a battle. And they really don't know what to do about it. You know why? Because they're organized under a presence that does not operate with grace or cooperate with grace whatsoever. So their evil tendencies and their bad tendencies have really left them in a position of disorganization and disarray, as it should be. And I hope good people are able to take advantage of it.
I hope.
No, there's no guarantees, but the opportunity is there.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, on the matter that we're going to discuss now, I don't know how much of an actual opportunity there is. We'll see, because Trump did meet with Palestinians and Lebanese when he was in Michigan, and maybe he understood that these people are actually humans, and maybe shouldn't be treated like waste. But we'll see, because judging from his recent appointments, I'm not optimistic at all.
Well, you certainly have the specter of the very uneducated and just not smart Marco Rubio,
who takes AIPAC money, which is hard to document how much, because AIPAC funnels money through different entities that donates to campaigns and so forth. So it's impossible to apparently drill down to the bottom of that and find out how much money he got, but it's in the hundreds of thousands.
Now, it shouldn't be that difficult, because you have to have FEC reports.
Yes, but it's sloppy, because you have to go and figure out all of these different organizations and which ones are AIPAC affiliated. Right? So they set up, I'm not going to say it's shell corporations, but they set up other entities to funnel AIPAC money.
No, I wonder why they are so clandestine about this. Don't they want people to know that politician X is on their payroll, basically?
Well, I mean, look, people weren't happy when, I would say no, because people weren't, first of all, because they support people on both sides of the aisle. They when you said the enemy, I'm thinking in this regard, there is one enemy, and everybody in D.C. is in bed with that enemy. The D's and the R's both have AIPAC guys.
Correct.
Remember Thomas Massey's quote? Thomas Massey, in an interview, basically said how the sausage gets made. And he said more than once he was talking to some of his esteemed colleagues in the House, and he would say, well, how are you going to vote on this bill? And the guy would say, well, I don't know. I haven't talked to my AIPAC guy yet. He said, yeah, we call them AIPAC guys. He said, I'm one of the only ones who doesn't have an AIPAC guy.
Or an AIPAC guardian angel.
Meaning somebody from the America-Israel Political Action Committee, who, like Wolf Blitzer, right? He worked for AIPAC, right? That AIPAC.
Yes.
Somebody from that organization, somebody from that entity, a foreign-controlled entity, has direct access to our Congress critters and tells them what to do, how to vote. And with the unstated implication, and perhaps sometimes it is stated, that you don't vote the way we want, the funding dries up. or worse, we will primary you. We will put in somebody who's going to do our bidding, who's not you. So that's the way it works. Now, this is totally legal. I don't think it should be. I think this should be absolutely outlawed. I think if Trump wanted to actually guard American interests in the Middle East, I think what Trump would do is declare AIPAC a foreign entity, a foreign government entity, and kick them out of Washington, D.C., and say you have absolutely no access to our political process because American interests have to be first guarded instead of a foreign government's lobbyists coming in here and throwing their money around. And by the way, how much of that money is simply recycled American money? From the insane amounts of money we send to Israel, and it comes back to American politicians through AIPAC. So they're all giving themselves something out of the, what do you call it, the $4 trillion trough? This is the trough at work.
Well, it's a $6.5 trillion all-you-can-eat buffet.
Okay, it's
even worse. Yeah, the new and unimproved version is $6.5 trillion. I want to go back to, there's a couple of angles here that we have. And folks, don't worry, we're not going to run out of time. If Brother has time, we can just take this conversation to you, Boob, afterwards. So don't feel pressure that you have to answer all these questions in great short order. But I want to go back to, let's kind of start at the beginning. But before we start at the beginning, let me just tell you one arrow in the Trump MAGA quiver that he has cut a spot. And he did say that he was going to ask Congress to pass it. Now, no Congress has passed it yet. I believe it would be ratified within a year, and that is pass the term limits amendment, two terms for a U.S. Senator, 4 terms for a member of the House of Representatives. That makes the AIPAC infiltration into a member of the House of Representatives' lives and to threaten to primary them, makes it just a little bit more, doesn't eliminate it, but you won't have permanent presence there, and then you'll have to work with new people. You'll have lobbyists that'll have to chase new people. Some people actually think that the term limit amendment solves many of these kind of problems. I happen to agree. Another way that you could solve it would be to pass the 29th Amendment, which has been sitting there since 1791, which would reduce the amount of representation back down to where it should be, around 40,000 citizens per member of the House. So at least one of those, Trump says is on the table. Let's hope that it is. Let's go back to the beginning, though. How did this monster, brother, come out of the pen of a mentally deranged man, Schofield, and then how did it ever come to the point where this is this a declared heresy? Is the Schofield Bible like heretical? Can we say that, or what would we call it properly?
We could speak of the heresy of Zionism.
Okay,
but that would take some development to explain. The church never came out and condemned it, but the church doesn't hold it. I think perhaps the church will issue an official condemnation, but we don't need a condemnation to know it's wrong.
Okay.
You have to understand, if you want to talk about Zionism, you have to first begin with Jewish Zionism.
Okay.
Then talk about Christian Zionism. Jewish Zionism, and some people are going to, if you hear me and you think that if you're listening to me now in New Orleans someplace or whatever on your radio, and you think that to be a conservative, to be an American conservative, means that you have to support Israel. I was there myself years ago. I had to learn a lot and to unlearn another lot.
I was there.
And that was it's just what we've been spoon-fed. And we've been spoon-fed this because there was a concerted effort to get British and American Christians on board with the Jewish state long before the Jewish state came into existence. This was an actual plan that was implemented years ago. But because when Theodor Herzl went to get support for the Jewish state all across Europe, nobody was interested, and especially uninterested was the head of the smallest state in Europe, a guy who wears white, Pope St. Pius X. Theodor Herzl writes about St. Pius X, telling him, "We cannot possibly support this. We can't prevent you from returning to the Holy Land, but the Holy See cannot possibly support this." It's written up. You can find it on our website, Theodor Herzl's from his own diaries, and it's on Jewish websites. It's not something I'm making up. But anyway, this plank of American conservatism is fake. It's not. It has nothing to do with American interests. It has nothing to do with conservatism. It certainly has nothing to do with a conservative foreign policy, because it's a very liberal foreign policy of getting us involved in all these wars and all this foreign aid. But what is Jewish Zionism?
Yes, what is Jewish Zionism?
Zionism is this. There is no Messiah. There is no personal Messiah coming. We are it. The Jewish race, collectively, we are the Moshiach. We are the Savior of the world. And the way that the Gentiles can be redeemed is by supporting us.
There you go. Okay.
So we get Shabbos Goyim, in the person, there's a Sabbath goy, the Gentile who does the work for you on the Sabbath, but by extension, it means any Gentile who works for Jewish interests. So we get Christian Zionism. They created Christian Zionism so that the nations could serve them, because that's what they think of the Messianic era. The nations will serve the Gentiles. It's a misreading of the Old Testament. In the Old Testament, the Hebrew Scriptures speak of the Messiah's coming and being the expectation of the nations, right? Leading the nations, not dominating them, not subjugating them, not making them second-class citizens, and so that the Jews are superior and the Gentiles are inferior. But that's very much the Jewish outlook. And I don't mean every Jew thinks this. Most Jews don't even believe in God, right? But the ones who actually are believing Jews, if you're an observant rabbinical Jew, this is what you believe, that the nations will serve Israel. And so Zionism has redefined the concept of the Messiah, because they understood the prophecy of Daniel. It's over. It's over. It can't happen anymore. There can't be a personal Messiah as the one that was prophesied by the Old Testament, unless it's Jesus Christ. And of course, we know that can't be the case, because we're Jews and we don't believe in that. And we have a whole history of 2,000 years of rejection of him. It's all in our Talmud, right? So they came up with a theory that they themselves collectively, as a moral person, you might say, to use the philosophical language, are the Messiah. That's Jewish Zionism. And therefore, to have the Messianic era, the Jews had to return to Haaretz, the land, right? Very important biblical concept. Christians completely redefine all these concepts. By the way, Haaretz is the church. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the land. That's the church. This is the new land. The new Holy Land is the church. Okay. It's not that patch of real estate in Asia, right? It's really Asia, right? Bordering the Mediterranean. But that's Jewish Zionism. Christian Zionism basically says that it's a misreading of the Old Testament. God says to Abraham, "He who blesses you, I will bless. He who curses you, I will curse." It's talking about Abraham and his seed. St. Paul is very clear in Galatians of what the seed of Abraham is. I believe it's Galatians 3. The seed of Abraham is Jesus Christ. And if you are in Christ, then you are the seed of Abraham, heirs, he says, according to the promise. That's St. Paul. That's the Bible. But Schofield completely misread it, as no Christians had read it heretofore, except the Plymouth Brethren, where the heresy started and grew out of. And Schofield had contacts with them in England. An obscure sect, the Plymouth Brethren. And the idea was they had this millennial dispensationalism, and the Jews are going to return to the Holy Land, and it's the job of the Christians to make this possible. a complete misreading of the Old Testament.
Right.
So the God's promise that he was going to curse Abraham's enemies and bless Abraham's friends, those promises were made to Abraham. And if they extend beyond Abraham, they extend to his seed, and that's Christ. And if we're in the mystical body of Christ in the church, then we are the seed of Abraham, heirs according to the promise. So the heresy of Christian Zionism denies this and thinks that the promises that were made to Abraham that were essentially fulfilled spiritually in the church are temporal promises. They still apply not to the church, but to Abraham's physical offspring, who are the Jews. Now, let me point out, Abraham's physical offspring also include the Arabs. Okay, Abraham's physical offspring include a lot of people in the Middle East that the Zionists don't want to support. They're enemies, the ones they're killing. Many of them are much more Abrahamite than Ashkenazi Jews from Poland and Russia and Germany.
Okay, so we're talking with Brother Andre Marie about the topic of Christian Zionism and Jewish Zionism, because it has come up in the early days of the Trump transition here. There's a lot of Israel firsters, Elise Stefanik, Marco Rubio, Mike Waltz. These are people that are Pete Hegseth, that are in positions of power. It's an interesting thing here, though. You look at pictures of people lacking pictures of Pete Hegseth on his right pec. He has tattooed the cross of the Knights, of St. John.
The Jerusalem cross.
Right,
yeah.
right. And he has Deus Vult on his right bicep. So then there are other Catholic symbols there. Yeah, 7 children. It should pain the Christian, especially the Catholic out there listening, to think that so many of your brethren are embracing this thing, because as I understand it, brother, especially given your explanation last segment, this almost requires a Ben Shapiro-like denial of Christ. There is no Messiah. He hasn't come yet. No, it's even worse. He's not coming. He's already here. If I understood what you were talking about.
Yeah, he's already here, and he's us.
Right. But then
this is what the early Zionists believed. And by the way, this is why Orthodox Jews rejected Zionism. I don't know how many people in the audience are aware of that. Orthodox Jews rejected Zionism because it was a rejection of the personal character of the Messiahs. They thought it was blasphemous to make these assertions. Now, many Orthodox Jews made their peace with Zionism because the Jewish state in Israel allows them to live there, and many of them, like the so-called ultra-Orthodox Jews, they don't have to serve in the military, which, by the way, that's why Yoav Gallant quit. One of the reasons why Yoav Gallant quit, not quit, he was fired by Bibi Netanyahu, because Gallant wanted to draft the ultra-Orthodox into the IDF, and that's not part of the deal, because those guys get to study all day and live off of the state. It's a socialist enterprise, I knew a Jew, an Israeli Jew, who taught me Hebrew years ago, and this woman said, "Yeah, Israel is the perfect communist state." And somebody in the class objected. There was this Christian Zionist in the class. Said, "Oh, you can't say that." She said, "I didn't say Marxist. I said communist." She says, "What do you think a kibbutz is?" And she wasn't saying it like it's a bad thing. She thought it was great. But anyway, there's so many things that American quote-unquote conservatives that are big Israel supporters, if they knew how the Israelis actually talk when they're not, appealing to Americans for money and such, they would be shocked.
Well, most people aren't going to even delve into this. As evidence of this, there's a guy yesterday on Twitter that told you, "I used to love you, Brother Andre, but now you're just wrong about everything."
You're an enemy and an idiot.
And
that was
right, and this is the normal reaction to someone that doesn't know about Christian Zionism and the heresy of it when you tell them, like, well, I'm not an Israel firster. Jesus did come. He's going to come back. And to quote David Spade, is this where you want to be when Jesus comes back? And you're on the wrong. You're reading this wrong. And I'm very concerned about your soul, because you're not only on the wrong side of it, you're on the side of the enemy now.
Yeah. Now, look, if you want to know a little bit about Christian Zionism and Jewish Zionism and the origins of the Jewish state and the violence that in 1948 started against the natives of the area, the actual natives of the area, there's a piece on Catholicism.org called "The Nakba and the Christians of Palestine: Important Background to Current Events." Now, the Nakba is like the disaster. It's the catastrophe. And this is what the Arabs, Christians and Muslims and whatever, doesn't matter what religion you are, they all commonly refer to the Nakba, the catastrophe. This is the 1948 displacement of the Palestinians that occurred when the so-called Israelis, the Jews, moved in and took over the place. Contrary to international law and so forth, made possible by the British, who really botched the whole thing. And all of this stuff is thoroughly documented. But go to that piece on Catholicism.org called "The Nakba and the Christians of Palestine: Important Background to Current Events."
It's in the chat room. Maggie found it.
And you will see stuff there documented. And I'm referring to the Sykes-Picot Agreement, the Balfour Declaration. I'm referring to Jewish sources as far as what Zionism means. I'm not making this stuff up. It's not my interest. I'm not going to lie.
It's not in my interest to even talk about it.
No. If you want to have a successful radio program,
I'm cooked. I'm done.
This is a third rail issue.
This is like UFOs.
Yeah, well,
no,
yeah,
it's not. It's not like UFOs.
But look at the present events so far in Gaza, and these are probably antiquated numbers. I got this off of an interview a couple days ago. These are probably antiquated numbers, and frankly, I don't even know how, with so much of the infrastructure of Gaza obliterated, how can they even keep the statistics? So we have at least 42,000 dead. We have 69% of those dead being women and children. 69%. Over 100,000 confirmed casualties. 72% of the buildings in the north of Gaza are completely destroyed. 52% of the buildings in southern Gaza are completely destroyed. This is not a war. These are not two armies fighting each other. Hamas is not a real army. Hezbollah in Lebanon, they're a real army. That's why the Israelis can't lick them. But Hamas is not a real army. And what's being done now to them is ethnic cleansing. And it's being openly spoken of in Israel that they're simply going to colonize it. They're going to wipe all of the Palestinians out or move them and colonize it. And some people saw early on this is a clear-cut case of genocide and ethnic cleansing.
Yes.
And by the way, by definition, what's going on now is ethnic cleansing. There's no other name for it. Genocide, too. It fits the legal definitions of genocide that are accepted in international law. This Italian woman, have you seen the Italian UN observer? I don't know if you've seen her, but she's heroically going out there and absolutely using the words genocide and ethnic cleansing. She does it without apology. And when people try to stick it to her, she just rattles off facts and statistics. I
have seen her from the floor of the UN. There's another woman in the British Parliament that gets this right, too.
By the way, go to October 7th, because you asked me, does the principle of double effect have anything to do with this? Well, of course not, because the principle of double effect, which is a moral, which is a tool, you might say, in the toolkit of the moralist, says that if you have to do something that has a good effect and a bad effect, can you do it? Well, the answer is yes, if it meets these criteria. And there are 4 criteria, and they have to be applied. Well, I mean, with the numbers that I rattled off, the completely disproportionate response to October 7th, that in itself shows you that double effect has been obliterated here. There's much more to it than that, because we could go through each one of the parts of the principle of double effect. But let's just look at the origins of Hamas and October 7th. First of all, early on in this so-called war, Bibi Netanyahu was grilled about his role in October 7th and what he knew and when he knew it and so forth. And he came out and he said, there will be a thorough investigation. Everything will be looked into. I won't imitate him anymore. There'll be a thorough investigation. Everything will be looked into, including my role. But first, we have to defeat Hamas.
First, we must defeat Hamas.
And by the way, there's always that specter, the bad guy we got to deal with. And by the way, don't look at the man behind the curtain, right? Don't look at the man behind the curtain, because, there's this big thing we have to deal with over here. Keep in mind, he's undergoing a corruption trial. He and his wife will probably spend the rest of their lives in jail for corruption if they get a fair trial. And so the war is like in his vested interest to have Israel in a constant state of heightened security. And no, I can't be dealing with a trial. His lawyers keep asking the trial to be delayed because you can't be fighting a war with the head of state who's has to undergo a corruption trial. So, and by the way, he's hated in many parts of Israel because of this kind of thing. But let's go to October 7th. I'm going to read you a series of headlines.
Okay.
People say, well, he's got to fight Hamas. And by the way, if you support... I don't agree with Scott Ritter. Scott Ritter, on one point, Scott Ritter said, if you're not defending Hamas, then you think it's okay, then you're on Netanyahu's side, and you think it's okay to be butchering all
I don't want to be on Hamas's side.
Yeah, there's obviously, I'm against binaries. That's why I'm not a Trump cheerleader, Mike. You know that.
I know this.
I mean,
but
Trump...
brother, full disclosure here for our audience out there watching on the Crusade Radio Network, I never asked you to be, and I never asked anyone to be.
I know you never did.
Well, there are people that accuse me of it in certain signal groups and here in the chat room. I never told anyone who to vote for. I never even told you that you had to. I said it's my informed opinion that you should, but that's up to you, bro. I'm not going to go to your. Okay. I'm also not going to go to your house and police whether or not you're going to mass every Sunday. That's on you.
Yeah, my point with the Trump thing is I'm not into false binaries, and the American political landscape is all about false binaries.
That's right.
So in other words, when I criticize Trump for some policy decision, people said, you going to vote for Harris? No. You just did like a 2 + 2 = 5 thing there.
Well, it's the principle also. They used to have this saying, and they have it in the British Parliament. They used to have it. They don't really have it any longer. It's called being the loyal opposition. It means you're loyal to the crown, and that's why you're going like, no, I'm going to oppose you on that because it's not going to be good for the crown. Yeah. So I am the loyal Trump opposition. I am going to be opposed to things that are not going to be good for what I think are going to be good for the American people. Now, let's just state one more thing here as we continue on with Brother Andre and Marie, who does host a little show here on the Crusade Radio Network called ReConquest. I suggest all of you go to CrusadeChannel.com. In the search box, type in Zionism, and you should get episode 111 and 112 of ReConquest. They both deal with this subject in intense detail, greater detail than we're going to get into here today. Now, let me state the second thing here. And Don from the Bronx in Florida in the chat room at CrusadeChannel.com/chat brings this up. What do we want? What do we want to be done about this? Well, I don't know that anything can be done about it other than the more people you educate and get to see, oh, I never heard that before. I didn't think of it like that.
It's called raising consciousness. It's called raising consciousness.
Right. The better chance J.D. Vance, for example, runs into someone and goes like, I hope you're not, an American, a Jewish Zionist, Mr. Vice President. Oh, no. You would want this, yes, to raise the consciousness. We're not winning right now. You're not going to win on this, but do what you can to raise the consciousness and mitigate the damage. That's what we're trying to do.
And I mean, supposing that's the attitude that we take towards academia, and we say, well, all these scientists in academia are pro-evolution, so we're just going to not talk about creationism and not talk about how sort of the emperor's new clothes of the fake science that goes behind justifying evolutionism. No, you need to talk about it, and you need to get more and more people to understand it and to know the truth. It's called the truth, and it's called raising consciousness about the truth.
That's right.
And the more people that can, and if you do it calmly and with some dignity and with facts that support you and with reason, then people will. Some people, anyway, will accept it. Now, it's against the vested interests, and I say that literally, vested interests of many in the political establishment to go along with this because they are paid not to go along with it. But that doesn't mean we can't try to get the public to know the truth about it. So just let me just give you a few headlines about Bibi is a cynical character. He's a politician, but he's not just even as politicians go, he's epically corrupt. Now, I'm going to read you a barrage of headlines. New York Times, buying quiet, inside the Israeli plan that propped up Hamas. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu gambled that a strong Hamas, but not too strong, would keep the peace and reduce pressure for a Palestinian state. Next headline, Times of Israel. 4 years, Netanyahu propped up Hamas. Now it's blown up in our faces. This was written on October 8th of 2023. The Israeli citizens knew that Netanyahu was propping up Israel. CNN, Qatar sent, by the way, Times of Israel, that is an English language Israeli newspaper. CNN, Qatar sent millions to Gaza for years with Israel's backing. Here's what we know about the controversial deal.
Wow.
Next headline from Plus 972 magazine, the not-so-secret history of Netanyahu's support for Hamas. From sabotaging Oslo, meaning the Oslo Accords that tried to make peace, to funneling Qatari cash into Gaza, Bibi spent his career bolstering Hamas to help perpetuate the conflict. Even after October 7th, argues historian Adam Raz, he's still advancing the same strategy. And by the way, this is Solve et Coagula. This is divide and conquer. What they're doing, no, divide et impera. I'm sorry, I got the wrong Latin.
Solve et Coagula is what's on Baphomet's arms.
Sorry. This is divide et impera, divide and conquer. And what are they doing? Abbas was the president of the Palestinian state, the sort of rump state of Palestine.
Right.
Hamas was beyond his control. This was Bibi's way of dividing the Palestinians so that they couldn't have statehood. Okay, Jerusalem Post headline: Time fact check, meaning Time magazine. Time fact checks Netanyahu interview. PM's claims on October 7th. Hamas found to be false. Time magazine published a follow-up. So the Bibi Netanyahu said, well, yes, we supported Hamas, but and then he tried to make it, I think, look philanthropic. And then he says, but previous administrations did too. Well, they published this in Time's interview, and then they published a follow-up to it where they fact-checked, and they found, no, actually, he was wrong. So you can find multiple headlines.
Does any American politician know this? I wonder.
Well, they're going to deny it, or they're going to take the AIPAC guys give them talking points, Mike. This is politics. It's cynical. This is where lies are the norm of the day. So they're going to get their talking points for AIPAC. Well, the reason that they gave that money was for humanitarian purposes, or the reason was because they wanted to have, some kind of political leadership in Palestine that was responsible, or whatever. But at the same time, Bibi Netanyahu calls Hamas terrorists, and he props them up. Why? Makes no sense. There were moderate Palestinians. Abbas was a moderate. He wasn't some kind of terrorist. Yasser Arafat was a moderate. And he was, and the Israelis were constantly doing things to undermine them and to encourage violent extremists, because then they can say, see, look, all the Palestinians are violent extremists, therefore you have to support us, and we can't give them a state. Well, the last thing, look, Mike, just real quick. Okay. The last thing I want to do is there's a website called If Americans Knew. It's ifamericans.knew.org, what every American needs to know about Israel-Palestine. And you look at the numbers of aid that went from America to Israel and the aid that's being given to Palestine now as humanitarian aid, and it pales in comparison. It also goes through that there's like, sort of Nakba 101 kind of stuff in here, showing you what happened from day one in Israel and when the 1948 occupation of Israel, of Palestine by the Israelis. And it shows you the results. It was violent from day one.
And if Americans knew, of course they don't. My point that I was going to make here on the Mike Church on the Crusade Radio Network here with Brother Andre Marie, the point I was going to make, brother, is when you were describing what Hamas, what we are going to do is we are going to defeat and destroy Hezbollah. There could be no peace in the world until Hezbollah is destroyed. Sounds very, very American of them. This is very NDAA Patriot Act stuff here. Let's find new enemies. Let's isolate them. Let's declare them to be terrorists. And then we must be on a permanent American jihad to defeat them. The problem really came in with Obama, who then decided, I don't just have a kill list in Yemen. I have one in Peoria, too. The problem became when American citizens then got targeted by the NDAA and the Patriot Act, and now we are the terrorists. So, look, there is a lot there's a lot of meat on this bone here. There are many people that have grave concerns. Let me tell you something that came up during the Zion King's first reign of near terror. They had this abomination to the Constitution called the anti-Semitism, an act to prescribe anti-Semitism as a crime. You can't do that. You cannot tell someone it's illegal to be an anti-Semite, as much as I am not and brother is not. If I wanted to be, and if I decided that I were, then that is my right. As much it is my right to be an anti-Scotsman or to practice anti-Mandarinism or anti-Szechuanism. If that's the same, this is you know what? To put everyone that is a descendant of Abraham into one group, as you said earlier. Oh, so you mean all the other people that are Arabs, that are descended from Abraham, which would include almost all of what we call the Arabs today. And again, brother said this at the beginning. This is a very, very, very complex thing. It's almost like you had to take a course in this stuff to get all the little nuances and details. But I just want the listeners and viewers out there to know that when you hear these things, and look, they're going to bring this anti-Semitism thing up again. It got defeated by Thomas Massey and a couple others in the conference because they were like, you can't do this.
Can I say something about anti-Semitism, Mike?
Sure.
Okay, that is a power word, and it's intended to intimidate and bully. Anti-Semitism is a racial category. It means hatred of or opposition to Semites. Now, we can talk about who Semites really are. One of my dearest friends, my mentor, my spiritual father was Brother Francis Ma'aluf, who was, yes, part Phoenician, but also part Arab, and therefore a Semite.
A Semite.
And he once told me a funny story about meeting an American Jew who was obviously Ashkenazi, and the guy introduced himself. This was in an academic class at Ann Arbor, Michigan, years ago. The guy shook his hand and he said, "Hi, my name is," whatever, he told him his name. He says, "and I hope you're not an anti-Semite." And Brother Francis said, "Well, actually, my name is Fakhri Maluf, and I'm more of a Semite than you are." Now, because he came from the Semitic land. He was himself Semitic. So, but even if every Jew were a pure-blooded Semite, which is not the case, and even if they were the only ones that were Semites, which is also not the case, anti-Semitism would still be a racial category, right? In other words, an anti-Semite is an anti-Semite because he can't stand people of the Semitic race. Now, no Catholic, by the way, can do that. No Catholic can do that. It's racism, and it's a prejudice, a literal judging ahead of time, which is what prejudice is, of somebody based upon what you might call an accident of birth. It's things
right.
that in that person that he can't control. Now, and that would apply to hatred of Japanese people. I had an uncle who he could never refer to the Japanese. It was always the damn Japs. I hated it because he grew up with this World War II jingoism against the Japanese.
There's a word we haven't used very often: jingoism.
That's racism. Okay, no Catholic can think like that. But anti-Semitism is a clever word because it masks the thing. It masks any opposition to, say, the modern state of Israel, or any theological opposition to Christian Zionism, or any theological opposition to Jewish beliefs which reject the Messiahs. It masks all that under a racist mask, so that if you oppose the state of Israel, or if you oppose the beliefs of Jews who reject Jesus Christ, which all Christians have to. You have to oppose those things because we have to say the Trinity is the true God, and if you reject the Trinity, you're wrong, right?
You're an apostate at that point.
And the same thing goes for Christ. He's the Messiah. He's the God Man. He's the Savior. He's the Redeemer. When we affirm those things, we have to condemn the opposite. That's just the way it works. That's how truth and error work. So my point here is that when you take those complex realities that are religious in nature and political in nature, in the case of opposing political Zionism, and you just wipe it all away by putting on the mask of anti-Semitism, which is a racial category, you're, number one, lying, and you're not telling the truth about what's really going on. And number two, you are vilifying and demonizing your enemy who might actually have a rational case. And instead, you're just saying, well, this is all this hateful bigotry on this person's part, and he deserves to be treated with opprobrium and not listened to. And that's what the word anti-Semitism does. I'm not an anti-Semite because I don't give a darn what race anybody is. The blood that matters principally is the precious blood of Jesus Christ, who, by the way, is a Semite. So when I receive communion every day, I'm entering into intimate communion with a Jew,
literally,
with a Semite,
right?
And that, by the way, is how I'm the seed of Abraham, because I'm in Christ. And for a moment every day when I receive communion, I'm even corporeally the seed of Abraham when I've got Jesus in me in Holy Communion. So, the racial categories just have to be completely chucked aside. It has nothing to do with German anti-Semitism, which was real, an actual racial hatred of Jews. That was real. And I'm not vilifying all Germans, not at all. I got a chunk of me that's German. I don't hate Germans, and I think the vilifying of Germans is evil. Just as evil as the vilifying of Jews, okay? We don't hate Jews. We don't hate Jews. We love them, and because we love them, we want them to know the truth. And the truth is that Jesus Christ is the Moshiach who came to save them first. He came first to them. And the Blessed Mother is theirs. The 12 apostles are theirs. 3 of the 4 evangelists are theirs. St. Paul's theirs. And the church is, when we say salvation comes from the Jews, which Jesus told the Samaritan woman at the well, we believe that. And what does it mean? Does it mean that salvation for the nations comes through the modern state of Israel because the Jews collectively are the Messiahs? No. What it means is that Jesus Christ is the Savior of the world, the God-man, and he's a Jew. And we have to accept that. So the Christians simply cannot be anti-Semites.
Okay, brother, let's leave it there. Good and clean, good in, good out. Under an hour, everyone could take a chance to listen to this at your own leisure. You can also get those episodes of ReConquest, which we will list on this page, episode 111 and 112 about the Scofield Research Bible, as they call it. And we will add whatever other links, including the ifamericans.org and all that stuff. So we'll recap all of this. on the YouTube page at crusadechannel.com and elsewhere. Brother, as always, thank you. I, like you, I don't win anything by having these very uncomfortable, very unpopular arguments. But maybe someone that didn't know before now knows. Or at least is inspired to go like, I never heard this before. And that's good. And Maggie's saying there are people in the YouTube chat that are going, thank you, because I never heard this before. So, again, that's the kind of mission that we're on. And as Joe Doyle says, well, basically, all of Boston is certainly you treat it as a mission. All of America now is basically a mission. No, it is true. We are all on a mission.
You make him sound like John Kennedy. That's funny.
Yeah, if I hear Joe, because I don't hear him often enough, if I hear Joe, it comes out a lot better. But be that as it may.
Ask not what you can do for the Catholic Action League, but what the Catholic Action League can do for you, or whatever. I flipped it.
Well, Mike, by the way, see, you started it.
Well, the joke here is that Joe Doyle can speak while inhaling. He's
Yes, he can.
circular. I'm a brass musician from way back, and there's this thing called circular breathing, right? Maynard Ferguson was famous for it. But Joe can circular breathe while he talks. It's super impressive.
We will continue having these discussions here as always. I also hope that I could have solved myself personally now, the Mike Church Show and the Crusader Nation, and could have personally at least assuaged and made people a little bit more comfortable with when I told you that we would be the loyal opposition. And it wasn't just to get you to shut up in the chat room, although I hope it did get you to shut up in the chat room. It was because it's a genuine statement, and I really take it as an offense that the way some people put it, that somehow we were just going to take 32 years of fighting and crusading for the truth, certainly the last 13. And some of you know what I have personally been through here. Put it in an envelope and airmail it to Mar-a-Lago because Trump got elected. That is not how we operate here. It's not how I'm going to operate. And hopefully a show like today's should be emblematic of that. So we'll continue on, brother. Thank you for the clarification on both of the questions. I hope people are motivated. If they want to write to you, if you want to write to brother, he's easy to find. He's hiding in plain sight. It's BAM, B-A-M, at Catholicism.org. So, well, you can find him on Twitter. You can yell at him on Twitter.
Tell me I'm an idiot and an enemy. That's great.
Right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Maybe one day I'll be humble. It'll help.
All right, brother. Thank you very much. God bless you,
Mike.
and we'll talk again real soon. Thank you.
All right. God bless, Mike.
All right.